lady.
Never
All right,
gonna
guys.
get used
All
to
right,
it.
so today we're just going over. Today should be really quick. We're just going to go over the basic lighting, 3-point lighting, 4-point lighting. It's kind of what we already looked into last semester. Does anyone remember what that is?
Yep.
Yeah. So 3-point lighting is that you got the front light, the back light, and the what's it called? The overhead, whatever. I think.
No, the backlight, the key light, and the other front. You said front light, so there's 2 front lights usually.
Okay.
It's a key light and a fill light. One's like the main light, and the other one's the one to fill in the shadows.
That makes sense. I remember where to place them. I just don't remember like the names.
Yeah.
Or
Because
side light.
even like the backlight, they can call it a rim light, they call it a hair light, they call it a key light. It just depends on who you're talking to, really. But essentially it's the same thing. Technically it's different, but most of the time it's the same thing when people say it.
Or the side lighting.
What was that?
Or side lighting.
Or side
Like
lighting,
sometimes-
depending on where you place it.
Yeah.
So there's no real like hard and fast rule to it. It's just the key light is the main light. It's the one that lights them up the most. Like you can see in this picture, the end product is the top left. The key light would be this, the one making him the brightest. The fill light's filling in those shadows. You got the rim light, backlight, or hair light, whatever you want to call that, where it's lighting up his shoulders, kind of separating him from the background. You got the bounce. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like just lighting up a little bit of his chin. So that's not really a part of 3-point lighting, but they do use bounce a lot in different lighting scenarios so that you can better fill in shadows. And then you just have the ambient light, the light that's already in the room. All that put together makes the top left look like the way it does.
This guy looks naked.
I think he is. This model.
Wait, let me see.
No, he's just talking about this model.
No, not like that. It didn't sound like that, though. It did sound like that, though. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Where, what?
You do not have that unibrow. Don't worry about it.
What?
The guy
What?
looks like he has a unibrow in some of the shadows.
Oh.
I said he looks naked. I didn't say he looks like Lakota.
No, I was saying because, you guys said it sounded like I was eager to see a naked guy. I'm like, don't worry,
Yeah.
honey.
But anyway, there's a bunch of different combinations you can do, as you can see, like using those 3 combinations.
Mm.
You can go for a
That's
bunch of
so
different
creepy.
looks. You can do different ways to make him stand out. You can make him look crazy in some of them. You make him look serious or make him look calm, or
Like a serial killer in at least 3
Well,
of
that's
these.
The first one looks like
I mean, most of these he looks kind of like a serial killer, or like he's getting ready to do something crazy. But that's the way you can do when you do different lighting setups. You can make it look.
The first one looks like
drastically
the first one looks like it's computer generated.
I mean, it is.
Well, I think it all is computer generated.
Is it?
So how
Yeah, I
do
think it's a model, and they're just doing like computer generated lights.
Yeah.
But they're just showing the differences of like moving a light around and how it would look.
Like one of the videos in the syllabus, they used a mannequin that looked really real. It was kind of scary how real she looked. But
don't
they
send
used
that
a
to me.
mannequin for it.
What was that?
Don't send that to me. I'm scared of mannequins.
It's in the WhatsApp. It's in the syllabus. I mean,
What is?
the video that we were watching with the mannequin.
Oh yeah. That's in the. Was that in the basic lighting one? I think that was in one of the 3-point lighting. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or comments about 3-point lighting?
So would you suggest practicing that like at night to try to get like the lighting to practice and do like all of the different looks? Because it'd be nice to be able to really see, because there's like 6 different like versions. Although it's probably pretty simple. But
Yeah, the more you can control the space, whatever you're in, the more you can control the look, as long as you have that, the amount of lights that you need. So if you do it in the daytime and there's a window next to you, it's going to change how it looks, because there's going to be light coming in from the window, daylight. And so that'll change. However, all these things look. So if you can go into, that's why the studios are complete black until you turn on all those lights, so that you can control everything about it and choose how you want it to look. So
That's cool.
if you have the lights for it, yeah, practicing at night would probably be the best, just to see how much you can control.
Or if you're gonna practice during the day, garbage bag your windows. So you
What
can
was
make
that?
it if you black out the windows with garbage bags.
Oh yeah, you can use like black scrim material, or you can use, like you said, garbage bags to block out the windows so that you can
Yeah.
make it look like night, so no light comes in, and then
But
you'll still have a controlled space.
Yeah, I would say make sure you get it locked down during the night, and then during the day, do it again with locking out the windows so you can learn from both settings. Because you have to know from both sides. It's not all the time you're going to get nighttime. You're not all the time you're not going to get. Like sometimes
Right.
you'll be stuck shooting during the day. So you
Right.
have to
I
learn
was just
both
meaning for
ways.
like, beginning practice, if you want to see how much you can control.
No.
Doing it,
No,
like you said, like doing it at night or doing it with the windows blocked out is the best.
Yep.
Sometimes having daylight come in is actually good. It changes the scene and it makes it look, you can mix different kinds of light and have other looks based on that too. So it just
what I'm
depends on what you
saying
want
is
to do.
learn from both. Like learn
Yeah.
from both. Like first try to get it locked down for the nighttime, and then try during the daytime once you feel confident.
Oh, okay.
Because then at least you know and you have that plan just in case you only have during day shoots.
Right. And that way, if you're trying to
Just-
work on a set, you're trying to do a production, your own stuff, and you have to work in only daytime, you'll know how to make it look the way you want,
Yeah, exactly.
even if there is windows.
That's how I did it myself.
Nice. Then what is this? This is so using 3-point lighting, they have a few different ways of doing it. This is just, we're gonna briefly go over this and then get into more of these a little bit later in the semester, but there's what's called flat lighting, which is just a light facing directly into the subject from the angle of the lens. And that creates minimal shadows. Shadows are present under the chin. That's the bottom left. So you have a little bit of a shadow under her chin, but the rest of her is pretty flat looking. They sometimes use this for like portrait photography and stuff. Usually when you're doing most of like short films and content like that, you're going to want some kind of definition. Even in photography, you usually want some kind of definition. So flat lighting isn't always the way to go, but it depends on what you're shooting. Magazines sometimes do flat lighting and stuff like that. So it just depends on what you're going for and you're shooting. It makes it look a little flatter and a little happier because everything's a little bright and there aren't really many shadows. And you can even use a bounce to go up into her chin to get rid of that shadow under her chin so that everything's lit if you wanted to go that route. Second one they say is called butterfly lighting. That's a light coming from directly in front and above the subject's face. Shadows are created directly below facial features. Most notably characteristic is the butterfly shadow created under the nose. You see the nose has like that shadow coming down because that light is coming from above. So it creates shadows below her facial features that stick out more. They have loop lighting, where the light is above the subject, angled to the subject's face. So a slight directional light. That light still falls onto both sides of the face. However, the shadow of the nose is extended to one side. So instead of it going directly below, they have it angled off to the left, and that's making the shadow go to the right.
That makes sense.
And then they have Rembrandt lighting, light from above subject and at a stronger angle than the loop. Leaves one side of the face primarily in shadow, except for that cheekbone in the eye. So we heard about this from, I think Brian and Jorge brought it up last semester, Rembrandt lighting. We're going to look into more of that later on in the semester, but it's the one where you have everything's lit. There's some shadows coming from one side, but the cheekbone is lit. It makes a little triangle on one side of the face. And wherever the light's coming from, that side of the face is lit, but everything else is pretty much in shadow except for that little triangle. We'll learn more about that because that's used a lot in different films and different photography. And then they have what's called split lighting, where the light comes directly 90 degrees to the right or left of the subject's face, and it leaves one side of the face completely in shadow, with the bridge of the nose and forehead as the diving or split line. You got that line right there at her forehead, the one at the bottom right. And one half of her face is completely in shadow, and the other half is, it's not completely in shadow, but it has the shadow only on one side of her face and the light on the other side. So they're still using some way to fill in her face, but the main light's coming from that side, and there's just, it's darker on the other half completely, instead of like there being a little light, like in Rembrandt and all these other ways of doing it.
Cool.
But that's kind of what it looks like. Key light, you usually have it also, because it's the stronger light, you usually have it at a higher like a brightness level. So the key light might be at 100%, while the fill light filling in the shadows is at like 50%. And what we didn't talk about last semester was kind of like lighting ratios. And that's when you do in like a 1-to-1 light ratio would be the fill light is the same distance and intensity as the key light. That'd be both of them at 100%, and they're both at the same angle. And so they're lighting up both sides of the face the same amount. And then you have like 2-to-1 fill, where the fill light is like what they call is one f-stop less than the key light. And that would be, you know, obviously one side's going to be a little bit darker. There's going to be a little bit of shadow, but not too much. It'll be kind of like that lady's face in the last one. And then they have like 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1. It keeps going like that, where the fill light keeps getting one f-stop less than the key light. So then there starts to become more harsh shadows. And if you do like a 5-to-1, they say that the one half of the face will be like almost completely in shadow.
Okay.
You can see if I can look it up. So I can show like show you guys some examples real quick. So 5-to-1 is like, well, they say 5-to-1 looks like this. So it has some pretty harsh shadows on one side, but not exactly what I was thinking. Here we go. So like a 1-to-1, you can see both sides of his face on the left. It's pretty evenly lit. 2-to-1, you can see the right side of his face is getting a little darker. 4-to-1, you can see the shadows are starting to get a little more defined on the right side of his face because the key light's on his left. 8-to-1, you got it a lot darker. Can't see too much going on in the right side of his face. And then 16-to-1, he kind of just blends in with the background now. That part of his face is kind of like completely dark, but the other side is lit. So whenever you're thinking of doing these three lights in unison, you have to think of your lighting ratios, how intense you're going to make the fill light, and how far away or close it is compared to the other light. And then you have to figure out what angle you want to put them at. Do you want to put it the same angle apart? And the more you mess with these things, the more you can change how it looks. So there's a lot to think about whenever you're thinking about lighting, 3-point lighting. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
I think that was all I wanted to say. Oh, and then 4-point lighting is the same stuff. It just has a light that's pointed towards the background to actually light the background. So it's using those three lights: the key light, the fill light, background light. I mean the rim light or backlight, and then it also has a fourth light for the background light, just to light up whatever's behind the subject as well. And it looks kind of like that. We have the subject in the middle, key lights on the left, fill light on the right, backlights to the top left, and then you're lighting the background with the one on the top right. Does anybody have any questions or comments about 3-point, 4-point lighting?
Backlight, ground light, key light, Altair light. When would you use a 3-point lighting versus a 4-point lighting?
The 4-point would just be if you want to light the background a little better. Whatever's behind the subject, if it's too dark. If you want it to be dark, it depends on the scene and the story, you know. But you would need an extra light to light the background itself sometimes.
One of the videos really showed how
Especially
well, like, it really depends on what you're looking for, like for the emotion you're looking for the tone you're going for, that kind of thing.
And also depends on the distance of the actor from the wall too. Sometimes, if you want to light up the wall and then you just light up the actor and they're distance enough, you're not going to be able to get the back wall enough. So you'll have to add an extra light to balance the rest, the frame.
Okay.
That's what I find, at least.
Yeah, and it's also depending on how close they are to the background, because some of the light pointing towards them will spill off into the background as well.
Yeah,
so you'll have to figure out how to shape the light.
I guess it
without
would also
using
depend on what kind of light you're using, right? How weak it is, how strong it is. If you need another source of light or not.
Well, it also depends on how you want to shape the light. Like with barn doors and stuff like that, you can like block the light from hitting certain spots. There's ways to do that. There's like the material you use like to block out the window. It's called like scrim. It's like some black material. You can use that with lights. And then there's also like diffusion and stuff. There's a few different ways you can go about trying to shape where the light hits and how it looks. And we'll get more into this later with all like diffusion and bounce and all that. That's stuff we're gonna learn next week. But yeah, pretty much 3-point lighting is used almost in every shot. Sometimes you can use 2-point lighting, sometimes you can use 1. And I've seen some scenes of movies and stuff, independent films, where they don't use any lights. They just use the natural light around them. They just like open the windows up a lot and stuff like that, and kind of.
Or they diffuse the natural light too.
Yeah, they either diffuse it or they use like a bounce card to make the light go back into the person's face, but it's all just natural light. So I've seen a few different ways of going about it, but the most basic form is usually 3-point lighting.
And that's another thing. And that's another thing that we'll probably see next week, like the harsh lighting versus the soft lighting, and how like the sun is a harsh light, but how they make it softer and how they make it more even when they're trying to use a natural light.
Yeah, there are a few tricks when you're outside to try to get it to do that too. All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Not at the moment. I think it's just like as you kind of like play around and get the lighting that you want, it gets better. Yeah, during the day it's harder to get those back shadows and stuff like that. And it'd be cool to be there and see like I've seen like yeah. So I think it's more like one of those things where you just do the lighting and you see it, you know?
It's on the day.
I mean, we have also heard that it is very important for you to know the place, like go beforehand and know the location, both for sound and lighting, for you to be able to see what you're working with, because that will help you in your setup instead of just going there last minute and being like, okay, let's figure this out. If you can go there a day before or a week before and just see what your situation is, where you can put the lights, where you have natural light, where you can maybe work with it a little bit, space that you have, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or have locations take pictures a couple of days so you can actually study the pictures.
That makes sense.
But I mean, as far as light, I feel like you kind of have to go there and see how much natural light that place brings, because not every picture is going to show that.
It just depends on if you can get a hold. If you can get a hold of the location beforehand, then definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always better. Sometimes you're not going to be able to do that, so you just have to go on set the day of, ask for pictures, and try to get the best sense of it. But yeah, the more you practice with it, the better you'll know and understand how you can do it within the location, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. There's always going to be unexpected stuff that you can't plan for.
So V said, if someone appears from behind the actor, would a
Oh, honey?
3-point be best if it's supposed
Honey.
to startle them? What?
Daniel's trying to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting.
Oh, go ahead.
But yeah, but basically, like I said, for picture, like always get pictures, because, like you said, you can never expect what could happen. If you don't have the day, like if you can't go there a day before, 90% of the time you're not going to be able to see the location, the light, the gaffers or light or the grips are not going to be able to see the location a day before. So sometimes you just have to work with you have, mainly pictures, and try to go from there, but always be early.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Like
definitely.
if it comes down to it, just try to be an hour early so you can study basically your area, your location, where the lights are going to be.
It's all that thing. Being early is on time. Being on time is late.
Yep.
Yeah. And at any time you have to do like setup or figure it out on the moment when you haven't had prep for the location because you just got it. Those types of people, like whoever's doing your lighting, whoever's doing the sound, should get there early so they can figure it out.
And always
beforehand.
give double your time. If you need 10 minutes, give them 20.
Yeah. That way
I can't.
any problems that come up, you have enough time for them to get it done.
And also it
Figure
gives you time to study the light, like to study the area
Mhm.
that you need a light. I can't stress that enough, to be honest.
I feel like that goes for everything, not just lighting. Like you should
Yeah, I know,
always
but
give them a little more time. But I know, I get what you mean. I'm just saying, like, they have that as a rule for everything.
Yeah.
But
The
it's
more
one
time you
rule
can give yourself, the better.
Yeah, it's one rule. Like I said, it's one rule I can't stress enough. It's one rule I'll always tell everyone I work with.
So V, you said if someone appears from behind the actor, would a 3-point be best if it's supposed to like startle them? You mean like if the person's supposed to kind of come out of the shadow, or you mean like if you want them to see both at once? Oh, if they're supposed to come out of the shadow, yeah, that would be, you could use 3-point, or you could just mess with the lights to figure out how best to get it to work where that person's not going to come into the frame. They're not going to be seen.
Honey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the whole 3-point, 4-point lighting thing, it's more about shadow and tone than anything else, because I'm sure at brightness level you can probably get it with 1 light or 2 lights, but it's the dimensions that you create with multiple lights in different places, located in different parts, that create the tone and the spatial awareness and that kind of thing, right? So it's more about that than
Yeah, because there's always ways to shape the light, like I was saying, like barn doors. Barn doors go on the front of the light.
Barn doors can be your best friend sometimes.
Barn doors go on the front of the light like this, and then you can like you can bend it down or up to make the light appear a certain way. So if you wanted to hide someone in the background, you could always light the person in the front, the foreground, and then shape the light so that it doesn't hit off the background. There's probably also, there's ways people put like lights above the actor. So you might have an actual light above the one right in front of him, if the person in the foreground, so that it doesn't cast too much light in the background. And that way the background is dark. It's a lot of different things. This for just 3-point lighting, it's used a lot, but it's especially if you're trying to do a big scene in a big place, you're probably going to have a lot more lighting than just those 3 lights. You'll have stuff looking like windows. You'll have stuff looking like ceiling lights. You might have lamps and stuff like that. So it depends on how big the set is, how much of the scene is going to be seen, and how continuous it is. Because you might have to move some lights around depending on what you're doing. So it all just depends on the location and everything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because when I hear 3-point lighting, I feel like for me it's just more like you put one, it's more about shadow and how you're gonna make that person look as opposed to the space they're in, that kind of thing.
Right, because it's also like you can't, if you're going to go for a close-up on somebody, it's a lot easier to try to shape the light around their face. And then once you try to do like a wide shot on them, those lights are going to be in the frame. So you have to, maneuver them around to figure out how you're going to do it so that it looks similar. It's not going to be completely different. It's not going to be completely the same maybe, but they want it to look as close as possible, but they also don't want the lights to get in frame. So, there's a few different things you have to do to get it all to work together. And that's where like the camera tricks and all that stuff come into play.
Ew.
A small space is harder. I think a small space, for me anyway, is harder to light because there's a lot of reflections and stuff. If you have like a very small contained space and you have like 2 or 3 lights, they're going to be, one light's going to be bouncing off the back wall, going back into the person. The other light's going to be bouncing off the side wall. And then the back light's going to be bouncing off the front. And so it's all very close, and that causes a lot of reflections and things like that. So it does get a little trickier. You can always turn on the brightness, but
that's true too. But I think we had done when a couple of the lighting videos you showed when they were trying to shoot in the attic and they were trying to figure out the lighting and they wanted the character to look a certain way. They were able to do it in a small space. It's just, it was like a one-man show with the camera in there, and once the lighting came and set up, then the guy came in and started shooting just to make the attic scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, there's ways to do it, definitely. I was just meaning like it's harder because of all the reflection that's going to happen. So you have to do a few more tricks to get it.
As much room to let there be spill, to let there be,
You also don't have as much room to maneuver the camera in.
So I was saying is basically where the 3-point lighting comes to. I guess like something similar to what V was saying, like if it's maybe like a one-shot thing for the character opposed to having, if you're doing that scene with a couple of people coming in and out of the scene, I could see that being real difficult.
Right. Yeah, you'll probably have different lighting if you're going to do like a school scene, for instance. You'll probably have lights actually coming from the ceiling to mimic how a school would look, and then also do some tricks like bounces and stuff like that. Maybe put a light off to the side in one of the doorways, different things like that to light it without making it look obvious that there's film lights in there. But while still lighting everybody.
It's just about your creativity and your imagination, basically, when it comes to that.
Right. Because that's getting more...
equipment also helps. Like, it does make it less.
Equipment does help, but it does... You can get creative with the stuff that you have as well. I've seen plenty of people do different things where they made it look like a window just by cutting out a cardboard box and putting it off to the side and having a light shine through it.
One of the videos actually shows they couldn't rent they wanted a confessionary. What do you call it in English? The place where you confess to the priest.
You're right.
It's a confessional.
Oh, okay. A confessional. They wanted to make a confessional, and they didn't have money to actually rent out a confessional. So instead, they just mess with the lighting, and they put like this thing to make it look like the window that has all of those little holes and stuff, and messed with shadow, and they made it look like a confessional. So it was really cool, and they did it all in like a room. I think it looked like a basement to me, but they did it in a room just with lighting because they couldn't afford to rent out the thing. So they made it inside, showing the inside perspective and a little bit of the outside perspective with lighting.
I think it's cool. It's always cool to see like how people come up with stuff, especially given what they have. Professional sets, I always see like it's crazy how much stuff they have at their disposal to get exactly what they want. That's why it's completely controlled, because they can block out as much light as they want, even if they're outside, and then they can light up as much as they want because they have these crazy huge things to reflect light and diffuse light and all these different things. But going down to the basics, it's always good to just see how everything affects each other and practice with that stuff and then expand, because we're getting into more difficult things when we're talking about like school scenes and a bunch of people moving around. Lighting will be a lot more difficult than it would if you just have one subject in the frame. So just basic lighting for 3-point lighting is mainly used for like one subject and for isolating people and making them stand out, maybe like 2 subjects if they're in the same area. But it starts to get a little different when you have multiple subjects moving in and out of the scene and they're going all over the place. Then you have to figure out where to put the lights. Maybe you'll put them on the ceiling, maybe you'll put some bounces on the floor, stuff like that,
Yeah.
which we'll get into more later on. But yeah, that was just the 3-point lighting, just to go back to that, to kind of fill it back in, get everyone back into like key light, fill light, backlight. And then we'll start talking more in depth about all these things in the coming weeks. Next, we got sound equipment. We're just going over a few things for sound equipment. The first thing is the sound recorder. Sound recorder is just the thing that you use. Let me just read the actual description. Field recorder is a device allowing you to record audio out in the field on your video shoot. These devices can record audio themselves, acting as a microphone. You can also record audio from a boom that's connected to the recorder. So usually what you'll see is somebody come in with something like, if it's an independent project, a higher end independent project, or a professional set, they'll have probably like a sound card.
H4n.
Or they'll have somebody like this that's wearing a H4n would be, I would say that's more like consumer level. I have an H4n. But I would say more like, you know, F8 or like the what's the other brand? I don't know, like 633, stuff like that. Where they have like these big boxes where you connect a bunch of these mics into. You can connect different kinds of mics so that each one, if it's a multi-track recorder, you can connect a bunch of mics into it and it'll have one track for each source of sound. So you might have what's called Lav Mics, where you connect it to somebody's shirt, you know, those little tiny mics. I think I have a picture in here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. So something like that. You might have that on each actor, hidden, of course, because you don't want there to be a mic being shown and that you're seen. But you might have one of those connected to each, and then they'll have each of those connected to something that's like a transceiver or a, what is it called? Transmitter. That's what it's called. Transmitter, and then a receiver that's plugged into your sound recorder. And that sound recorder will have that actor's dialogue. Whenever they speak, they'll go into that mic and it'll become their track. Like their soundtrack will be separated so you can isolate it when you get to editing. If it's not a multi-track recorder, then what the thing will do, even if you have more than 2 plugs, because most things make it become stereo audio, which is 2 tracks, one for the left side of the speaker and one for the right. And if you have like 8 plugins, but it's not a multi-track recorder, it will combine the sounds and mix them itself into 2 tracks. So the better thing to do is to have a multi-track recorder, because you want to be able to have each person's dialogue be on their own track so that you can mess with their soundtrack. Maybe they talked a little too loud in this and you need to lower it. You don't want to have to lower every noise in the track. You want to just be able to lower their track to make it a little less loud and poppy and stuff like that.
Sound mixers are good too.
Yeah, sound mixers, sound carts, all that stuff. You see that these people doing it. These people with these backpacks, they know what they're doing usually. They can like mess with the dials to make it. There's usually dials on the recorders themselves that allow them to kind of change the volume coming in. So if someone is being too loud, they can turn their mic down using they can turn the volume down coming from the output of that sound. So basically it'll just turn down that person's mic without like having to actually go over to the person and change their mic settings.
Especially when you're filming and stuff, you don't want to just like walk in the frame and turn down their volume.
Yeah. So like you can always turn them up, turn them down using something like a field recorder. And you'll see people that have like, that's where they plug in these boom shotgun mics, and that's where you have those mics on that boom pole. That guy is usually either plugged in wirelessly to one of these, or he is plugged in directly with a XLR cable into one of these for its own track, and then that person will point it at each actor as well. And we'll show you that in a second. Let me see. Oh, also the other thing about these recorders is some of them have what's called time code, which is very useful when you're trying to sync up your audio with your visuals. If they have a time code, they can sync it with the video, and the video can have a time code as well, so that you know exactly when to when it connects, so that it's not going to be out of sync if you try it yourself. If you don't have time code with your recorder, you have to go into editing later and try to sync it yourself, and sometimes it can be hard. That's why they have the clapper boards, you know, the things that action. Those things, because you want to have some kind of noise to connect the audio with the visuals. But if you have something that does it automatically with time code, then it'll just automatically sync those things later for your editing, and it makes it a lot easier, but it is more expensive. Stereo recorders, yeah, stereo recorders are good. Like the ones, even the ones that have multiple inputs for you to do multiple mics, they're good. They're still good. It just means that if they have, like, let's say there's a recorder that has 6 inputs. I think my H4n, my Zoom H4n has 6, I believe.
No, it has. Does it have 2?
Does it only have 2? I thought it had some on the sides. Or am I thinking of something else?
I think you're thinking something else.
You're right. I only have 2.
I have it.
No, you're right.
I had a, yeah.
It's still good. It just can only have 2 channels of sound. So you'll only see like this. You'll see like the left and the right. Well, this is a H4n Pro, but so it's not the one I have. I have just the H4n. But it records 1 channel to the left, 1 channel to the right. Even if you get something a little better, like I don't know if the H6 does or not, but I know it has multiple plugs. I don't know if it does multi-track or not, but just for an example, it has at least why isn't it loading? Excuse me. Oh, there we go. So this one has 4 plugins. This is the H6, Zoom H6. So you can plug in 4 things. I don't know if it's multi-track or not, but let's just say it's not. Even if you can plug in this 4, it's still going to combine it down into 2 channels, left and right. So you'll still get everybody's audio, you'll still get them talking, but the device itself might make it a little harder to isolate someone's dialogue. Like if you have 4 characters speaking at the same time, it's all going to be combined into 2 channels. So it'll be a little harder to differentiate anybody, especially if you want certain words or certain people's lines to be a little louder. Maybe you want character A to really pop out and when he's arguing with character B, and character C comes in and starts arguing too. But now that they're combining those 3 characters into 2 channels, it's harder to isolate character A and make him stand out apart from the others, because they're going to be in 2 channels. So they're all going to be kind of the same level of audio. You can turn down the level and stuff like that, but multi-track just gives you more freedom with really isolating each character's sound and audio and choosing which one to really focus on in editing. Okay, what else we got? These also, if you're thinking of buying a recorder, they run on batteries. So you have to think about that. You'll have to probably buy multiple batteries and make sure you have a charged one at all times, because at any point you don't want to just run out of batteries while you're recording the scene. So you want to be sure to always check for that and be constantly having the new recharged batteries into your device so that you're continuously shooting.
And don't buy the non-rechargeable or dollar store.
They're what? Oh, right.
The non-rechargeable or the dollar store ones.
Well, don't
'Cause
they
in the dol-
run on like their own batteries? I don't think they don't run on like AA and
So-
stuff, right?
Some rely on normal batteries too.
Oh, okay. So that's something else to look out for then, because I wasn't even aware of that. So some will run
I
on
discovered
AA.
that
I know
last
the
month.
H4n runs on like AA batteries.
Yeah.
So you want to be paying attention to all that too. Whatever it runs on, if it has an internal battery that you'll have to buy an extra battery or two of. I know some can like plug into the computer and I think some can run off of the computer, but you know, those are usually lower end. So I would always, you know, when I'm looking at getting new equipment, I'm always looking at like mid-range or like, you know, consumer or prosumer grade level so that I can get something decent without spending too much money when I don't know what I'm doing instead of like going for the cheapest. Because the cheapest options are usually the ones that aren't used for the highest quality, of course, because there's a reason they're more expensive. But yeah, so these things will record. They'll record to like removable media, like SD cards or something like that, where you'll take it out and put it into your computer, and then you can get the files from there. So you'll also have to think of that. If you wanted to get one of these, you'd have to make sure to have batteries, removable media, like the SD cards or whatever it takes. Different ones will take different things. I know my Zoom H4n takes SD cards.
And carry the charger for the batteries on you at all times.
Yes. Or at least have something charging if you have it on set. So you can have
exactly.
Charging the next battery.
Yeah, keep it plugged in. Even if the batteries are fully charged, keep them plugged in because even with cold temperature, the batteries will die quickly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I heard about that too. Temperature definitely kills all batteries. Cold temperatures will drain battery life.
So always keep a battery for any of your equipment that takes rechargeable batteries. Always keep it on standby in charging at least one or two of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that the hard way so many times.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that before too, where it runs out and you're like, I don't have another one. And you have to wait for it to charge. It's awful. Or you have to go buy some more or something like that.
Yeah, I had to buy $100 battery last year because I didn't realize it did that. Like I totally forgot. It escaped my mind. I had to buy a battery for my T6. I'm like, damn it, I can't afford this, but I need it.
Yeah.
I had to move to my computer because my phone died. Sorry about that, guys. Good second.
Okay. See,
Weird.
so something like that, you don't want that to happen if you're on set. Like her phone just died. If that was her field recorder, now that scene has to be stopped so that they can change the battery so that we can start the scene again. Something like that, you don't want to happen. So that's why you want to always keep track of batteries on your recorders or other devices that you're using.
If stuff
Also,
like,
the other thing with the recorders is most have multiple outputs. So you can actually send your audio to multiple devices. If you have any kind of wireless transmitters, they can be sent to your camera and to the field recorder. So you can have 2 copies of your audio, which will help just in case anything messes up. You have 2 copies of your audio so that if one's accidentally deleted or there's a problem, you'll still have your audio because it's very important.
Arden, were you trying to say something?
Oh, I'm gonna type it out.
Okay.
Sorry, he's trying to get the explanation, and sometimes we miss it. But don't be afraid to like express your opinion as well and stuff.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions or their own opinions on it, like let me know. I'm just trying to like go through it quickly. So sometimes I don't hear people.
Arden said, can you talk about wireless versus wired connection? Because I've been taught that wired always gives better quality.
So that I haven't learned about yet. I'm not sure. Right now we're just learning about like like I said, sound is my least knowledgeable area. So I'm actually learning a lot this semester. like I've learned a lot every semester, but this semester I'm learning like everything because I don't really know anything about sound too much. So,
But
um,
we
It's
have
anything-
heard in a few videos that, if you remember, honey, they were talking about wireless and how only the people more high end tend to use it because the cheaper wireless ones are not that great. The quality
so the
isn't the
wireless
best. It can easily disconnect.
pick up noise. It can pick up signals from like phones or from your
Mhm.
camera or from other devices that have different
Or
audio. I know
calls.
that. So there are complications when it's like a cheap wired thing, or even like if you're using radios on set, sometimes they can pick up signals from that. They're not going to pick up
Static.
everything, but they might pick up like a weird noise or a popping or whatever might
Yeah.
happen.
Does
it'll
that
pick
does
up
that
some-
end up in the like post stuff, like your material?
Yeah, it'll end
Sometimes.
up like in the sound file itself. There'll be some
Oh.
weird noise.
Like
Um,
I've heard I try to get the wireless one and it's horrible, man. The videos in them they talk about is bullshit when they're like, oh, it works so clear. Look at me outside and it's windy. And I'm like, that's bullshit because I bought some of this stuff and a little wind pickup, you hearing everything, man, with the wireless.
I was taught that when we in school, when it would be time to edit our audio, like in sound class, to always use a wired connection and never use wireless headphones because it won't yield as good of a signal. And
oh yeah, I've heard
also-
that too.
I also
Anytime you're editing, like I've heard using wired anything is better than using wireless.
I
It's just like when
also-
you use like a wireless mouse, like it's
Yeah.
good until it doesn't work all of a sudden. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
it'll
I
get
was gonna
interrupted.
say, like, it's just a thought, but if it's anything like Wi-Fi, you'll always get a better connection, like to your router, if it's a wired connection than if it's like a wireless connection.
Ugh,
Yeah.
yes, especially
Ethernet.
with this new internet we got. It sucks.
Yeah, this 5G
I
crap.
was
No, our roommate got a
I
new
didn't-
router and it's just been a very like
It
messy.
is 5G, and that's why it's crap. But anyway,
I
we're not
Sorry,
talking
Ida,
about
what were you
it,
saying?
it's crap.
remember.
Let her
I
didn't
don't-
speak.
I also don't remember who told me this. It might have been one of my friends who's like a sound, like self-taught.
It probably
and,
was
like,
me.
Sound engineering, but like what is like, okay, you know, like the standard, that standard round thing. The aux cable. That you put
XLR
into-
cable?
Yeah, auxiliary cable. Okay, I don't remember who told me that the bigger version of that essentially is like better in terms of quality. I don't know if that's true because I never.
I think
used
it's
it.
with the copper and the
Are you meaning like XLR compared to auxiliary or?
I don't know what the name of it
no, I
is.
think she means like the quality.
The one
you know,
that looks
how
like
you
an aux
put-
cord, but it's bigger. Like the ones they use in sound studios, I think.
Yeah, like they put them back of a speaker or something like that.
Yeah, they have those giant, like, those little 3mm plugs, but they're huge.
Right.
Yeah, it just looks like a bigger version of the aux.
Yeah, guitars have
cable.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
Like an
good qualities
amp?
too. But and also I think the
I don't know the name of
brass
it.
is better. The brass tips are
Uh-huh.
always better. They said for
I know
connectivity.
XLR cables, but I don't know.
Just for reference, so that no one says we're crapping on 5G.
No,
We're
no.
not. I'm sure the technology will be there soon. Right now, it's a
Okay.
little crappy.
The one like next to your mouse,
This one?
like the left one of it. Yeah, looks like that.
Hmm.
The left one. Yeah.
Wait, the one on the left right here?
No, the one you were just on, but like
Oh,
the
so this
left
one.
Yeah, the one that plugs in. That
Okay.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I'm sure it is. I just don't. I haven't heard anything about that. I know about XLR cables because that's what I've used, and I even learned that the more expensive ones are expensive for a reason. So they use like gold tips and stuff like that to connect,
Mhm.
and the wiring is very different, so that if you step on it and everything like that, it's not going to mess up the cable. So
Mhm.
whatever you heard about that is probably true. Because anytime you think about, I don't know, anytime I thought about cables, I was just like, whatever, I'll just it's a cable. But apparently it makes a big
Oh.
difference.
Who told
Yeah,
you
the
that? Who
XLR
taught
is
you
good.
that?
The XLR is good. I told her that.
No, I was sorry for because a few months ago, he was like, "Oh, I'll buy a new cable for I think it was the Xbox or something. I just buy some cheap cable off eBay." And I was like, honey, you can't just buy any cable. Like, trust me on this. And then I only know this because of earbuds. I used to buy, the crappy
Yeah,
version, the
you're
earbuds
welcome.
and whatever, and they suck so bad. And I was like, don't do it. Trust me, the cable makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's
you
like,
took
no,
my
it
advice.
doesn't.
Yeah, so when you're
I'm
when
glad
you're-
you took my advice.
Yes, thank you, Brett, so much.
So when you're trying to do sound, you want to make sure to get a really good cable because the sound will travel differently in the cable. It might, have some kind of
And also,
I don't know the
cheaper-
exact. Sorry, what?
sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Oh, go ahead.
But the cheaper they are, sometimes they'll rattle inside because they're very loose.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, you can hear it.
Right.
Yeah, and if you touch the cable at all, it makes a noise onto your recording. You got to be very careful with those because even on the good ones, if you have a really good one and you touch the cable, you'll pick it up on your sound.
Oh.
Yeah. And also
Good
they're
to know.
easier to mess up if you step on it. If they're the cheaper ones, they can mess up the internal wiring. So the more expensive ones will have like coating around it that's hard coating with some kind of metal or some kind of material that makes it tougher and more durable. So just the cable alone is something to think about when you're thinking about sound, which is I think it's kind of crazy, but I know it's true. It just seems like it wouldn't be,
I know. So many people made fun of me when I would tell them like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I prefer to save up and buy the better wire for my charger, or the better earbud," and they were like, "Yeah, you're just being bougie or whatever." And I'm like, "No, there is an actual difference."
I
the
mean,
internal wiring.
Think about the
It is some
era of
truth to
like
that though.
the era when everybody had to have wired earbuds. Like the cheaper they were, if you like put them in your pocket like once, like the next time I use them, like it would only work in one ear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they would
Or if you
pop.
sweat a little bit, it'll stop working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now I can't afford the wireless ones, and also I can't find them, so I'm still on the wired. But...
Yes, you can. Just save up for it. If it takes you a year, you can do it.
No, honey. If I pay let's say I pay $300 for like the AirPods, right? And I lose them. I can't see those things. They're small.
No,
No,
Best Buy
you
got
can get
insurance.
I mean, I just got ones that are essentially like AirPods, but not really. Like just
The
different
knockoffs.
brands. Like no, I just like you can get decent. I got a decent pair of headphones. I got a decent pair of earbuds. The ones that like have the thing to cling onto your ears, so they're like not.
Ooh, I
quite
hate
that
those.
small.
I hate those so much.
Yeah, but it's like
But I know what you mean. There are some good ones for
better.
like $100 or 50. Like the Bose are pretty
Or
decent.
like
They
yeah,
priced.
but you can get a decent one from like, in my opinion, you can get like a decent one between like $30 to $50 if that's like your limit.
That's good.
I've
Yeah.
gotten decent ones from Amazon.
I
Actually,
just feel like I'd lose all of them, and I'd constantly be buying them, and I'd be like those old ladies that constantly lose them, and I'm just like.
Well,
But it is annoying to have that wire like constantly stuck on stuff, and oh gosh, I think I've bought like 3 or 4 different.
But you
earbuds
know
at
how
this
you
point.
you know how you can get that loop for your glasses, like so you don't lose your glasses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can get the same thing for AirPods now.
Yeah,
And
I don't use
Have
even
a
the
necklace
glasses
of 'em.
one that I should be. I'm not using those, but yeah, you got it. Uh, that's true.
she doesn't want to because it makes her probably think it makes you look like an old lady.
Yeah.
Although there are some that you can hide behind your hair and stuff. But
All right, but getting back to this sound recorders, the last thing we were already talking about, like since the wires have, the internal aspects of the wires will change how the sound is. Also, if you're trying to not have a sound, what am I trying to say? If you're not trying to have a field recorder,
what are you trying to say?
if you're not trying to have a field recorder, some cameras do allow you to, do audio straight to the camera, but they say that the audio circuitry in your camera isn't as good as a field recorder because it's, that's not its main function. And cameras also tend to compress the audio as they record it, which further reduces the quality of the sound. So a field recorder is better because it's made specifically for that. It'll get better sound, and it doesn't compress it as much. Depending on which one you get, it'll have less compression than whatever camera you have that you can plug your mic straight into. The other thing was the XLR cables are better than the, what is it called? Auxiliary cord. Yeah, I mean, there's certain mics let you plug in different cables into it and into whatever device you're using, but the XLR cables are going to be the best and provide the best audio quality most of the time.
That said, don't buy one on our recommendation and then sue us if it doesn't work for you.
So
Yeah,
that's
I'm
my
not
plan now.
gonna tell you what brand to get, so I'll just say you got the wrong brand.
Yeah, exactly. You're not liable for any money you waste.
That's my new plan now.
But does anyone have any questions or comments on field recorders? Anything I left out?
Oh, thank you, Arden, by the way, for bringing that up.
People call this
That
like
was
the
really
brain
important.
of your
Well, that
sound
reminds me, I
department.
need
So
to
it'll be
start-
like
I
the
need to
thing
get
that's,
cricket
you know,
sounds.
attached, everything's attached to it, and it's the thing that's doing it's the brain, it's the powerhouse of your sound department.
1 second. What, Daniel?
I need to get some new cricket sounds.
No,
Okay.
no.
I will actually kick you out of the room. No. I'm
And these are
kidding,
just like
but
some of the
don't do
sound
that.
recorders you can get. There's a Zoom F6, stuff like that. It has multiple attachments on the sides, different dials, different things like that. The more pricier they get, the more they tend to like block out that interference noise we were talking about if you're using a wireless system.
Yeah.
The more they're able to block those incoming noises and all that stuff to make it less interceptible or whatever to all that stuff, so that you don't get those unwanted noises. And the pricier they get, they also have, most of them have like better displays where you can have these little knobs where you can change each individual track. Multi-track and time code aren't in all of them. The cheaper, those make it more expensive. But if you're trying to have everything be in sync, time code's really good. And if you're trying to isolate your audio for each character so that you can have more options when you're going into the editing room with your sound, multi-track is a lot better so that you have multiple tracks of the audio and you can choose what you want to highlight where, and you have a lot more freedom of choice.
Is multi-track like layers, or is it like having mics? Or
What was that?
is multi-track like having layers like on like visual media, or?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like having
Okay.
a different track for each audio, for each input of audio. So if you have 6 mics, you have a 6 multi-track recorder, it'll have 6 separate tracks of audio.
Oh,
wherever
so
those
6
mics are.
mics, 6 tracks. Okay, got it.
I was thinking on like choices and stuff. Sometimes it's good to have like less choice and make it work, and sometimes it's good to have a lot of choice. Really depends on what's going on.
Yeah, it depends. Like for scripted content, I think it's always better to have more choice because you can spend a lot of time editing it and everything. If you're doing something really quickly, like or event based, that's when it starts becoming like, well, you don't need all that. You plug a mic straight into your camera and get the best you can, like depending on what you're doing. But for scripted content in general, I say more options is always better. Because you can take that time and spend that time editing it all and doing it all in post-production. That's why post-production takes a long process for that kind of stuff. But if it's something you need in a deadline, that's when you have to start making those choices to cut back. And what am I going to do? Maybe I'll plug it into the camera so it's straight, already synced and everything, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those are the decisions you have to make on the moment.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. To a certain extent, like if you have like 5 or 6 choices, it's good. If you have 250 choices, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little insane. So it really is like relevant.
Right. And that even passes down to like video, because you have some directors who want to record 80 takes, and then some directors just want to try to do 2 takes.
Yeah.
Because the other person wants 80 choices to choose from, and the other person just wants, they want to get it the way they want, and then they're good. So
Balance is the secret to life, right?
What
yeah,
is
it just depends on the
So
process and
probably should
how
go
much
with,
you're
like,
willing
20
to cut
tape.
out.
That's what I think. So
Hey, sorry if you already mentioned this, but is time code for like synchronizing video with audio?
Yeah. So time code would just be knowing it the exact, I think it's like millisecond or even farther down. I don't know the exact term, but so that it syncs up exactly. And it depends on like what editing software you use, but most of the newer ones can do automatic syncing if you have time code. So they just take whatever audio you have and whatever video you say these two go together, and then it just automatically syncs it. So you don't have to find that point where the slate hits.
Well, that's fancy.
Yeah. It's pretty
Fancy.
nice. And also when the slate hits,
I'm
you
sick.
might not get it exactly right. So it might be off by a millisecond or two, and it might not be noticeable. But then if you're trying to get it on the big screen, people might see that it's off a little bit because they're seeing the lips a lot clearer and bigger. And that's when syncing and those kinds of things really come into play. Because you can't notice it generally if it's close enough. But if it is off at all, you can notice it in certain areas.
yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so moving on from field recorders is these things are called Comtex. They're pretty expensive, and I don't know how much you need them right away, but just something to mention because we're talking about sound equipment. They say among the most expensive items you might purchase would be a personal receiver, otherwise known as a Comtech. Comtech allows you to listen to the sound on set if the microphones are on and if the sound is being transmitted wirelessly. So if you have somebody wearing one of what we call the Lav Mic and the actor is doing their dialogue, you can have the director or somebody else wearing one of these, which they'll hear the sound as well as whoever has the field recorder, because they can plug in their headset. Whoever's doing sound, the boom operator, they'll have a headset on, they'll be hearing what they're listening to. And then the director can have one of these, or the producer or whoever, and they'll be able to hear exactly what's being recorded onto the sound device as well.
That makes sense. That's super cool. It's all
It
super
is. It's really cool. But it does. As we were saying earlier, the wireless stuff does end up causing some problems if you have, depending on what devices you have, because they might be picking up some of that interference.
Mhm.
And you're looking over $300 for one of those.
Yeah, they are really
Yeah,
expensive
we
too.
saw 'em.
Like I said. So
But
that would
apparently,
be something
I
later
think
on, but I thought it would be
I
cool,
could be.
to have.
Yeah,
something.
I thought for me, from what we studied about it, it just seemed like it is worth it if you have like a bunch of people, and you need to keep track,
Yeah.
or if you have a bunch of people working on the production and they can't always be sitting there observing every single little thing. So
Oh yeah, I'm sure you can rent all this stuff, Raphael.
I'd prefer just getting a sound mixer
Me too.
and just like having the headphones attached to that.
Me too. But sometimes you
Yeah.
need to listen to like exactly what's being heard through there, so
Yeah,
you can
but
see
with a
how.
sound mixer, you can listen on the spot.
yeah, but sometimes you need multiple people's input. For example, like
That's
if
fair.
it's a sound mixer and the director, or if it's multiple people, like the producer as well wants to know and wants to have a say.
That's fair.
It's just stuff like that. Or some people even use it to let them know when the person's done, so that they can call the other crew in. So it's just stuff like that I can see the necessity for in bigger productions.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much in smaller ones. I could be wrong, but that's just
No,
my
I
opinion.
agree. Like I think like some of this stuff is more for, higher end independent productions or, big budget films. And
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like
you
that.
can rent this stuff, by the way. One of the videos we were watching, he said that he had his arsenal of equipment, but what he doesn't have, if it's for a specific shoot, he will either he'll either borrow it from someone he knows, or he'll rent it from one of those companies that have all the filming production stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you can rent it.
That's cool. And that's good to know. I would say like buying like every single piece of equipment, unless you're actually planning on doing a lot of work in that department, is probably not the smartest
Right.
investment.
No, definitely. So the only reason I wanted to go through equipment first for sound is just because I want to know when they say any kind of equipment, we'll be able to know what they're talking about. So like usually you'll use this kind of equipment. We'll be like, okay, that's how you get this, the way they're getting this sound. Like most of the time, what I think is on set, most of the time, usually it's only the boom mics or what's called a shotgun mic, or however you want to, the name they give it is shotgun mic, but it's on the boom pole, boom mic, cardioid, there's different names for it. And then the lav mics, and those are mostly used on sets. And then like the other mics are generally used for more like post-production stuff, sound, like getting sounds out in nature and stuff like that, like sound, like actually going out and field recording. That's why the field recorder. But when you're just picking up stuff on set, you're usually just trying to get the dialogue. You're trying to get the people's voices, the actors' performances, and all of that captured in the audio. Not so much all the sound effects, because that stuff's added or created later.
That's good. I like that, getting enough like inputs and then adding stuff later is kind of fun. It's like embellishing it. So it's like you have the raw content and you're like editing it, and then you just be like, ooh, let's add a sound effect here.
Yeah, no, yeah, I actually have an idea for us to all do like a little clip of audio or video clip with audio, and then we'll start adding some stuff, changing it, and doing different things as we learn more about different processes of sound. I think it'll be fun.
Sounds great. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to all of it.
Was it? Oh yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, no, I like being here. It makes my day. I'm like, ooh, I think you're like earlier, you're like class earlier. You're like class on, and I'm like, oh yeah, you had to go to class tonight.
Yeah, cool.
Not a class. Okay.
It's kind of class-like. But like I said, we're all
I
I'm learning
know.
it too. So
We're
I like
learning
having
together.
input from everyone else as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, bringing up the stuff about the
It's
wireless
a
thing
class,
is
but there are
awesome.
no teachers. Let's think about it like that.
Yeah, kind
Bullshit.
Yeah.
of.
Oh, poop.
There's no I'll be the teacher. I'll wear the teacher's hat. Who wants to decipher this problem? Does anybody have a solution? No.
What's 2 plus 2?
You guys are Looney Tunes teachers? What the heck?
Yeah, exactly. It's a show, Priscilla.
Okay, let's keep moving.
All right, let's
people.
move on.
2 plus 2 is 8.
So what I was talking about with the field recorders, you'll usually have somebody using a sound mixer on set, using a sound cart like this, having the sound equipment all there so that they can adjust it on the go. And this is also something they use to carry around the sound. If they have to mic up an actor or something, they'll have everything they need on this cart. The batteries will be charging somewhere either on here or close by. I've seen people like they've attached, what do they call it? The extension cord plugs where you have like multiple plug-in sources so that they can charge everything they need to on the cart itself. And they'll use this to just basically have all their stuff in one place and know where it is and be able to move it around on set.
That's good. I know
That's what it looks like when you have all the stuff. It's like a crazy robot.
Crazy robot. That's awesome.
All right, so going into the boom microphone or shotgun microphone, a type of microphone characterized by an extremely directional polar pattern. Polar pattern, something we'll learn about a little bit more next week. I added it to the syllabus after I heard about it, and I already kind of knew about it, but I wanted to learn about it in more depth. But basically, it's just like where it's going to pick up sound from. Shotgun mics may be condenser or dynamic, but are almost always built with a long 8 to 24 inch tube protruding from the front. Shotgun mics are sometimes called line microphones. Shotgun microphones need phantom power, what's called phantom power, which is like 48 volts. So on different devices like the field recorders, you'll either see phantom power or you'll see 48V and you'll see like an XLR plug-in. And that's where those XLR cables come in. You plug those in and you turn on phantom power on whatever device you're using. And then the mic can be powered. Certain mics like the Rode NTG2 and stuff like that can be powered with battery. But I've heard that phantom power is always better. I don't know exactly, but I've heard that it's better to
Yes,
always
it
use
is.
phantom power.
There are also, and Coda's probably going to go into this, mics that will absolutely die if you use phantom power on them. So make sure you know which mic you have, what they need, and that kind of thing. Because you can kill a microphone if you're using phantom power and it doesn't.
If it doesn't
it's not
require it,
compatible.
you can overload it pretty much.
And-
But it's
yeah.
all of these types of mics, the shotgun mics, the ones that are used for like the boom poles, they use
So what's phantom power?
power.
I like phantom power. Let's bring more phantom power.
It's
What's
kind of,
phantom power?
it's not necessarily it's kind of wireless, isn't it? It's basically like taking,
No. Wait, what's
well, not
wireless?
wireless,
You have to
wireless,
plug in
phantom
the
power.
XLR cable to it. You can have a wireless XLR transmitter, but usually it's wired.
Okay, well, Brand is asking specifically what is phantom power.
It's just a way to power the mic. It's just a name for it. Let me look at
Wait,
it.
I literally Googled it. Can I say it?
Yeah,
go
there's a
ahead.
video that explains it way more than we. But way
Because
better
the
than we
power is carried on standard microphone audio wiring in a way that is invisible. Oh, just because the wires are hidden.
that's like they wanted a
So
cool
it's-
name.
it's like
for it.
So
hidden
it's
power.
regular
like,
ace,
that's
it's
it.
regular plug-in power, but it's just the wires are hidden.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
Okay.
the only reason it's called phantom is because you can't really like
because they
see.
want it to sound cool. I mean, come on, television.
I thought you guys were talking about some new technology. I was like, phantom power, like, whoa, Back to the Future on me.
It's
Dude, I'm sure
No, phantom
television
power
came
is
out,
just
people were
like you
"Ooh,
plug
it's
it
so
in.
cool."
it's Danny Phantom Power.
You just plug it into something like this.
It's
and
ghost
this would be the
power.
phantom power that it would be plugged into. It's just like
They trap
it's
ghosts
just
and
like
they
in
put their
plugging it
spirits
into a
in these
wall, but you're
things.
plugging it into a device instead.
Oh, okay.
They
It's
trap
just like
ghosts and they put their spirits inside
amplifier
of
or
these
something.
boxes, and they use their ghost.
It just it sends the
ectoplasm
right
energy.
amount of voltage to the mic so that it's not overloaded and so that it works
Oh,
properly.
okay.
So that's
Okay,
why.
okay. Thanks.
But all of these other mics can be plugged into different sources where they don't have to run on phantom power. And that's why I pointed it out, because these types of mics need it, which is like an external power source, when other mics can just plug in directly to whatever and they're powered.
Extension cord,
It's
whatever
a-
outlet.
Yeah, like if you ever have one of those mics where you're doing like karaoke and you
Yeah.
have like the condenser microphone. I think it's condenser.
Right.
It's a real boost.
those just power automatically right when you plug them in. They don't need a separate thing for it.
Hey, Lakota.
What?
No, don't let him talk. Keep
It's a
going.
real boost to have.
Oh man.
You missed my pause.
No.
You can't deny that wasn't good.
What you are clever. I'll give you that.
Hey, I had a ghost of a chance for that one.
So,
that one was meh.
One thing I want to say about shotgun mics as well is what they have, like what I was saying, the polar pattern looks like this. We'll learn more about this next week. Don't worry too much about it. But if you put the mic right here, the polar pattern is going to look like that. That's where it's picking up sound from. One of the things about shotgun microphones is that they have these things on the side right here. If you see the
Middle one
little
looks like
slits
a
on the
butt.
side, that will kind of like I don't know if it deflects it or if it like takes it in. Either way, it does the same thing. It's trying to take sound from the side and make it not be as loud as the sound coming from the front. So this mic has stuff in the front where you'll pick up all your sound. It's very directional, very narrow. And the sound coming from the side will like kind of hit off each other in a way because of how it's designed so that it doesn't pick up as much sound from the sides. It can also pick up sounds from further distances than a lot of other mics because it's so directional, it's going straight ahead. So you can pick up things from a few feet away compared to what's called omnidirectional, which is picking up sound from every direction.
Why
If
does
you
that
look at
middle
this,
one look like a butt?
that second circle The whole thing is covered. It's picking up sound from all angles, omnidirectional. And those would be like a Lav Mic. They pick it up omnidirectional. And that's where some problems can come in if you have like traffic in the background or stuff happening all around the actor and you only want to pick up their voice. Shotgun mics are probably the way to go, because you can lift the mic above them and point it down at them so that nothing else is getting picked up, just them. But if you have something like a Lav Mic or another type of mic, they're picking up sound from other areas, so they might be picking up sounds that you don't want to be heard.
And
like
you aim
traffic.
for their mouth. Don't aim for their feet, aim for their mouth.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that's
have
why they say put it like right underneath their mouth. That's why the best place to put it is like on their throat, right underneath where the mouth
Like
is.
pointing it toward the throat.
Yeah,
Don't put
pointing
it on
towards
there.
and also, what about the dead cat or
Yeah, I'll get into that. I think I was leaving that for later as well. But
The dead cat. What
it's
about
a name for this thing that you put on the mic so that it doesn't pick up as much wind noise.
It's basically a
The
furry.
fuzzy, it's like the fluffy thing. I don't like that it's called dead cat. It bothers me.
Yeah, dead cat.
It's
Also
also
wombat.
called, it's also called wombat.
Yeah, keeping like
Does that make you feel better?
So it
Dead
looks
cat
something
is
like
Maybe
this.
a little bit.
Because wombats are like, less cute.
And it's just to like stop as much wind
they
from
re-
getting to the
Do
mic.
they use real cats?
Because of how it's designed.
I don't think so,
Aw.
unless they did once, and that's how I got the name.
Because of how the shotgun mics are designed, they do pick up a lot of wind noise. That's what they say. They are more sensitive to wind, which is why they have all of these types of devices and these wind muffs and different things called like dead cats, dead wombat, to cover the mic in. You even have like these things like blimps. Let me see, road blimp, which we'll get into a little more later, but it looks like that. And you open it up and it's just an empty thing where you can put the mic on in the middle. Oh, right here. So it looks
that's
like
a
that
big
on the
blimp.
inside.
Holy crap.
On the inside, it looks like that. And then you cover it with a blimp so that it has air around it so that if there's wind hitting it, it'll not be as
I've never
hard
seen a
hitting.
blimp so big on that.
Holy
The
crap,
one in the
this
middle?
one?
Yeah,
It's
holy crap.
huge.
I've never seen one that big.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
oh, a blimp, yeah. Have fun. Blimps are fun. Like peas. Anything set's fun, to be honest. Like I like just working it. I'm like everything's interesting. Like you see the big blimps, the big lighting. It'd be cool to, be more involved.
It is cool to see and how it all works and how
Yeah, I
much
mean-
there is. There's just so much. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's never ending, which is that's the fun, thing about it is like it doesn't matter where you are. There's always more you can do in life in general too. That's like my favorite thing about life is the fact that it's just like no matter where you are, who there's always something more you can learn. There's always, a discussion that you can dive in and talk to. There's always like somewhere to go. So it's cool.
Yeah. There's always something new and there's always new things coming out too all the time.
But staying consistent is good. So it's like if you make up like a plan or you're like, okay, I'm committed to this. This is what I'm doing. It's good to be able to like stay this. And then you start to see like steady progress and you're like, wow, I'm actually getting, decent at this. This is actually working out for me. And then that's really cool
Yeah.
to see as well. So yeah, it's all
Yeah.
cool. So mixture. Because if all you do is so strict, then you have no life at all. It's like, it's good, but it's like, give yourself like, for me, what works for me is like, keep a few things that I'm very strict with. And then I play around and a couple things can, be less strict.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever I feel like, yeah. More like, yeah. That makes
V
sense.
said, is that a pop filter too?
This one right here is a pop filter. And that is something you'll use more with like post-production stuff. You don't use that as often in the field.
They
you'll
do
see
say it's
some-
really recommended for those kinds of microphones though, because they are expensive and they can become ruined very easily with like saliva, and like the little crevices can become clogged up. So
the
they
kind of
recommend
mic you'll
if you-
use in like a studio setting, you would have a pop filter so that it catches spit, and also the the wind coming from your mouth every time you make a P noise or something like that, or a T, so that there's not as much puff of air going into the mic. So you'll have something like that, a pop filter. But for the shotgun mics, with which this is usually used more in like a studio setting or like a post-production voiceover ADR or something like that. But these shock mounts, they're used with the boom mic, shotgun mic, whatever you want to call it. You put them on the middle because they're so sensitive. If they move around at all, they will have noise. And like Daniel was saying, the cable even will make it generate noise. So there's a lot of different things you got to make sure that there's no unwanted noise going in. And one of those is using this shock mount so that any movement that goes back and forth when you're having it on a boom pole won't affect the sound. It won't go into the mic. And that's what these things are for, so that it can kind of have a little bit of leeway, a little bit of room and space so that it can go to the left and right and wiggle around without causing it to interfere with the sound.
Either have an assistant with you to hold the cord, or basically have no slack on the ground, have it attached to you somehow.
Yeah, I've seen people like they'll wrap it around their shoulder and their arm and kind of carry it as they go. Or they'll wrap it around the boom pole in a way to where it's not loose, because you definitely don't want the sound, the wire to be flipping back and forth, causing a bunch of noise. I think we had somebody, I think Will was in here on the first semester, and he was talking about how you could hear the person scratching. And that was because the cable was, scratching against the pole, going back and forth, and it was getting into the mic. So any movement with that, you don't want, like Daniel was saying. You want to make sure it's tight and not too tight, but like you want to make sure that it's not going to be moving around during the take.
And also if you're going to wrap it up, like make sure you wrap it up properly so you don't damage the cord inside too, because those things are easy to damage.
Yeah.
And like best way is to attach it to your belt, I find.
Okay.
Like use a twist tie or something like that.
Oh yeah, I've seen like twist ties, especially
the cord,
especially when it's too long, and that's why they don't usually have it be like too long of a cable too. Because I've seen some people you can buy really long cables, but the longer the cable, the more likely it will be that some problem arises during its transfer to the recorder. So the shorter the cable, the better is also another thing.
Just because you have a long cable?
Yeah, because there's more areas for the sound to mess up, or for it to go through, or there's might be a crack in the cable you don't know, or whatever the issue is. The longer the cable, the more things that can happen before the sound actually gets to the recorder. So they say the shorter the XLR cable, the better. Because then it's an immediate transfer, and it's very, very less likely to have those issues that a long cable would have. Say like 6 feet, 10 feet, but once you start getting like 40 feet of cable because you don't want to carry it around or something, that's when it starts introducing all these problems. You could have it dragging across the floor, different things like that.
That makes sense. Yeah, short and simple is good for most things. I mean, good to have that option for like, because this in most locations it's going to work, but there's going to be some locations where things are finicky, and that's when it gets more challenging and interesting. So although that's after you're really good at the simple stuff, and then the more challenging stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you can't do the simple stuff, like the easy setups, then don't do you know what I mean? Like stake your ground, whatever you're doing. So
Always start from the basics.
What I'm doing.
And work your way up.
Yeah, and it's just like it can be frustrating sometimes because you're like, oh, I want to be doing that, but you're like, oh no, you'll get that one. Just keep doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
all right. So back to shotgun mics real quick. They say that the cheaper ones can pick up sound from around 3 to 4 feet away, and the more expensive ones can do like 6 to 10 feet away. So that's good and bad. It depends on how much stuff you're trying to pick up. That's why they usually have it above them, pointed down, because they want to isolate that person. Because if you're pointing it directly at their throat or their face or their mouth, it will also pick up the sound that's behind them. And there's a video that we had that showed that he was in like a construction warehouse, and he was hearing all these noises because they were pointing it directly at him, and you could hear like the buzz saw in the background and all of that. But then when you took it above him and pointed down at him, you could hear him the same, but you couldn't hear the background as much, and it was a lot better. So it's also about the positioning of the mic. They say over the head and pointed down is better than under and pointed up, but in certain situations, you might need to go below them and point up. But the reason they say not to do that too is because it will also be picking up sounds from the ceiling, which will be like different sound waves. Maybe it'll sound waves travel, so they will hit off the ceiling and go back down and stuff like that. So the mic will actually be picking that up as well, and it can make the sound a little worse, which is why they say to try to point it down at them. But it just depends on, you know, what you have to do to capture the sound, depending on where you're at. Because they also say like same thing with the ceiling thing is hard surfaces, because sound waves will bounce off of things. If you have a lot of hard surfaces in the room, it'll make it a little more echoey and a little more, you know, like it'll make it worse sounding, because it'll make it sound weird and unnatural, because the mic will be picking up different pieces of sound bouncing off the walls. So be aware of like hard surfaces in your shooting locations. Sorry, I'm looking through the rest of my notes. Oh, another thing they said, another reason they said to not have, you need it separate, and that's when the field recorder comes in. You don't want it attached to your camera, because your camera, you want to be able to move around. You want to be able to get closer or farther away or side to side. And anytime you change position, the sound is going to change, and it'll be very noticeable. So if you have it attached to your camera and you're moving backwards, you know, the sound's going to start getting a little quieter as they're talking. And that's why you usually have a dedicated person, boom operator, and a sound mixer, sound department doing their own thing, so that you can keep the sound consistent when you're recording it.
That makes sense.
And this is also where they were saying blocking and planning ahead of time is really important, so that you know where the audio should be recorded from. Depending on your location, you might have a blind spot when you do the when you do the take. So that's where that sound person can be. But if they get too close, or if they move the mic this way or that, they'll be in frame. And so you want to know where your location is. You want to know what kind of shots you're going to be doing. And that's why it's good to do these, you know, different things that we learned last semester, like the storyboard and stuff like that, because pre-planning will really help out the different departments figure out where they need to be and how they're going to get their stuff done. Audio
And
needs to be,
communication is key.
what was
And
that?
what?
Communication is key. Make sure you know
Definitely.
with the camera department where your headroom is, where the headroom is, and where it ends.
Yeah, because you don't want the mic to you want it as close as possible to whatever you're trying to capture, but you also don't want it to be in frame. So you want to know where's okay. You know, once I get down here, you're in frame now. Okay. And then they know where they can go. It gets a little tricky whenever they have to move around with the person moving, but that's when you'll have extra people helping guide them around, so that they can focus only on recording sound, recording the person, and someone will be guiding them behind them. Kind of like with the Steadicam, when the guy's walking backwards and they have someone grabbing his shirt and kind of guiding him. You'll do the same thing with sound. That way they're not tripping up, but they can also just focus on their job.
And they're holding the
capturing.
cord sometimes too.
Yeah, and helping them with that. So that's why you might have like a sound assistant or someone else in that department to help do those tasks.
That makes sense.
So there's three types of like the shotgun mics. They're cardioid, and this is like where these polar patterns come into play. So you have cardioid, supercardioid, hypercardioid, and ultracardioid. And those sound crazy, I know, but they're really just like where the sound's going to be picking up from. If you look on this polar pattern chart right here, you can kind of see it. The cardioid is like where the shotgun mic starts happening. Like, oh, sorry, shotgun's down here, bottom right. But you can also have one of those mics be just a cardioid, supercardioid, or hypercardioid mic. So they might not be picking up this exact pattern where you see in the bottom right shotgun. They might be picking up this kind of pattern where there's kind of picking up a little bit more of a little bit less directional when it's cardioid. And when it's supercardioid, it's picking up a little bit from behind and a little bit less wide in the front. But they say that the ultracardioid mics are not generally good for the boom because they are so directional that the slightest movement will have the sound off axis, so it will get quieter. Let me see if I can see an ultracardioid. I can't find it. It's weird. Basically, you don't want it to be too directional usually because you want there to be some leeway. Like we were saying, if they are following the person, they're gonna not be able to keep it exactly in the same spot. They're not gonna be able to point it directly at their throat the entire time, which is why you would want it to be less than ultracardioid so that it's not super directional and only picking up their mouth area. And if they move anywhere at all, now the sound's quieter. So you won't want that. You want it to be a little more, there to be a little more leeway, so that if they move side to side or whatever, if the mic goes off center a little bit, it's going to still pick up the sound pretty much the same. It's not going to be too noticeable. So supercardioid is mostly used for boom, which you can see is like right there, third to the right. I mean, third from the right, from the left, sorry. All right, last thing about shotgun mics. Short shotgun mics. You have some that are a lot longer and you have some that are shorter. And they say that the shorter mics will reject only the highest frequency, the higher frequencies, but a long shotgun mic can reject frequencies down to like 200 hertz zone. So, you know, the shorter the mic, it might pick up those quieter noises that you don't notice too much unless you're really focusing on it. So it's not terrible, it's not that bad, but it does pick up a little more noise than like the longer ones. The longer ones will produce better sound most of the time, from what I can tell. And then lastly, the shotgun mics tend to sound a little more natural to us than the Lav mics. The way we hear things is a little more like a shotgun mic, so it'll sound a little more like how we hear things, and the Lav mic will sound a little bit different. Anyone have any questions or comments on any of that?
Not too much. I'm probably not going to go into sound.
Like, is it noticeably different? Do they have to fix it in
Being
post?
realistic.
Yeah. What?
Like, is it noticeably different? Lav mics versus shotgun mics?
I believe so, yeah. Like if you look up a comparison of a Lav mic compared to a shotgun mic, you'll be able to
With
hear.
a lav mic, it's usually a lot more quieter, I find.
Because it's picking up sound in all directions, and it's also very close to the
Like it's
subject.
right, because it's right on the person, right on your talent. And then basically with the with the boom, you get a lot more clear sound to it.
What a lot of them have said also is they do recommend that if you can, to use both, because it is like sometimes there'll be a mistake on one, or the sound will be uneven on one and will be better on the other. And I really do think it depends on what you're using it for as well. But a lot of them did say that if you can get away with if you can use both, especially on bigger productions, you should.
Yeah,
Just
because
because
then you
it's-
have more options, because if the boom mic person doesn't notice that they are picking up some of that traffic in the background because they're pointing it in a certain way, that lav mic won't pick it up as much maybe. Or maybe the lav mic's picking up this traffic because it's picking up sounds in all directions. And so you want to go with the boom mic for that piece of audio. And so the more options you have for it, the better, which is why they, like Priscilla said, they were saying to use both if you can. That's why those field recorders have multiple inputs, so that you can have multiple different sources of sound. Sometimes they don't even have the sound on the talent. Sometimes they'll hide it in like a plant nearby or whatever they're standing next to. That way you can't see it, depending on what the person's wearing or where they need to be, or if they're going to be moving around a lot. They'll put the mics in different places, and then the boom mic will be off somewhere else being held. So it just depends on the situation, and you have to be creative with it, like with everything else.
there
But
was
the
some
more
really good
options you have, the better.
videos. Yeah, there were some really good videos showing, like, depending on what you're using it for, what kind of mic would work best for you, the differences in distance between them, where to hide them in your clothes. There's some really good videos explaining that kind of stuff, which I thought was really good. Because we know that not everyone is gonna like do a big production film all the time. Sometimes it's just gonna be a YouTube video, or sometimes it's just gonna be a presentation. So to know which mic works better for your situation and why, and to always have backup audio files and extra places where you can record the audio is just important, just because you never know when your mic is going to fail on you. We've had so many people that have either shared films with us, or that have like just randomly shared their indie stuff and talked about how in production their mic would just not work, and they would lose hours and hours of filming, or like an entire day the file would get corrupted or something like that. So there are so many horror stories about stuff that can go wrong with sound. They do recommend, if you can, to have more than one source.
Yeah, and that's why the field recorders will also have those two outputs, so you can put one to your camera, one to your field recorder itself, so that way the sound is going to two places if you can get that wireless thing. If not, then with the lav mics and the shotgun mics, using both at the same time, you'll be able to pick up two sources of sound. So if one sounds better than the other, you can always have that choice. It'll be going to the same place, but you'll have more choices if one sound file sounds weird for some reason. If the boom mic has a scratching noise all of a sudden, you'll be able to switch to the lav or back and forth like that. So it's always better to try to use both because of that. But if you have it, you need a boom pole, which is just simply a steel pole that's attached to your 3-point hitch and functions as a small crane. While it cannot lift high or a lot of weight compared to a crane, it can sure lift a lot more than you can. Boom pole.
I would also
person.
recommend doing your research, because not every lav mic is the same, not every boom mic is the same, obviously. And compatibility, because apparently that's something else we learned that we'll probably get into more next week. But just stuff like that, I would recommend always doing your research and multiple sources, and especially with those, if you're on a budget, looking at those videos of 6 months later, 1 year later, to see how it holds up over time.
V asked, would the direction of the mic stay the same for the recording ambience? Yeah, most likely. And you don't really record too much ambience. You might record like the room tone, which I guess is the ambience. But you don't use it in the way you would think in post. You use it just to get like, so that the edits flow better, is when you try to get the room tone to sound the same. So anytime you're in a different space with the audio, you can still have, you can overlay the edit so it sounds like it's coming from the same place. But I would say that you would point it in the same direction that you're recording from. If you're recording and moving around in the location, then you'll probably, I don't know, maybe record a few different areas with the room tone so that you have it from those different directions. But overall, I'd say if you're just in one area and you're pointing the mic in generally the same direction, then I don't think it matters too much. But yeah, so they say like the boom pole matters, which ones you get too. Some can be really expensive, some not. And it's because some are made out of really really durable material that is also very light. Because those boom operators are going to be holding it above their head, or they're going to be holding it in weird ways, trying to stay out of sight, but also have the mic pointed directly at the talent. They have to, do different positions with their arms, and that can be tiring if you have something that's heavier. So you want something
for a
that's
road
lighter.
mic.
What was that?
Go for a road mic. They're super light.
A road
just
boom pole?
Yeah, they're really nice. Just got one.
I have heard that they're really nice.
One of the videos we have, I think, is from Rhodes, and they're talking about their different mics and what is better for what. And there's a few comparing it to other mics as well.
I was talking about boom poles.
Yeah, even boom poles.
Yeah.
They're comparing
boom
those
pole's
as
not
well,
a
weren't
mic.
there? Oh, sorry.
So
In my head,
guys
it's
are
the same
talking
thing.
about their boom poles?
But
That
you
doesn't
know what I
sound right.
mean? Like, you know what I mean? There was a video talking about different mics and boom poles. And which one works best for what and that kind of thing. Because there are some that, depending on how long they are, how narrow they are, they can capture more sound, or they can just concentrate more on the sound that's directly below them and that kind of thing. So there's also
You're talking
that.
about mics, not boom poles.
No, I'm talking about the boom pole, aren't I? There's
Boom
a
poles
whole
don't capture
video.
sound.
There's
Boom
a
pole
whole
is just
video
so that the
talking-
boom pole is just for the mic to be, attached.
Oh, okay. They call it a boom pole even when it's with the mic. That's why I got confused. Sorry.
Boom pole in the mic.
I had
Okay.
it confused.
So the boom pole is just about
Daniel!
how light and durable it is, and you don't want it waving around because
Don't
it
do
will
that.
cause more sound issues. So you want it to be sturdy and be able to be held for long periods of time in the same place without having to move it around all over the place, because it causes more sounds to be there. And then also you want it to be able to be durable so that it doesn't snap or get wiggly or whatever after long uses of time, because you're constantly unscrewing it and extending it and then screwing it and putting it back
Oh,
where
I
it
just be
was
so
originally.
scared of that thing being like standing up on its own. What if it falls? What if it breaks? I would just be so scared.
Well, usually when you're trying to stand it, put it back down, you screw it back and you don't leave it extended so that it's smaller.
No, I know, but like when you're trying to keep it in place and not have someone hold it all the time, I've seen cases of like people
then you have like a stand for it.
I know, but I'd still be scared. Some of them look so skinny, and I'm just always looking at it like, how does that thing not fall?
It just depends on whatever material it's made out of.
Good night, Brent.
Good night, Brent.
Good night, guys.
Later.
Hi.
But yeah, so you want a good boom pole for that reason. If you're going to be doing sound, or if you're going to offer your equipment to whoever you're getting to come into your production, then you'll want to have, pretty good equipment for them to use. So,
And also release, just make sure they sign off on it too.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I always have them sign off on everything. All right, we'll move on to lavalier mics now. Lavalier mics, like we said, they're these little mics. They're omnidirectional, which means they pick up sound from every direction. And they are attached to the talent's clothes, or sometimes in their hair, or sometimes in a plant, or wherever it can be really close to the actor, as close as you can get to like as close as you can get to their mouth, pretty much. You want it like around their throat. They say around like the chest area if you're going to be putting it on their person. But if you can't put it on their chest, if they're not wearing like a shirt or the type of clothes they're wearing doesn't allow for it because you want it to be hidden, then you'll want to put it somewhere else, like near them or in their hair, like I said, or if they're wearing a wig, they can put it in the wig or underneath clothing. If they're wearing a t-shirt, it can still go underneath as long as it's not going to be poking out.
That makes sense.
They say, like, you know, if you're wearing a tie or if you're wearing a jacket, it's easy to put it on the inside or on the collar, underneath the collar. That you can put like tape around it and tape it to the person's body with like medical tape, and it'll still pick up the sound and it won't be slipping everywhere. The only problem comes in if the actor is moving around a lot in the scene. Their clothes can rub against the mic, and that will cause. What was that?
And if they have a hairy chest too.
Does that cause a problem?
Yep, it rips at the hair.
Even medical tape?
Yep.
Well, then maybe you could also try gaff tape on their clothes.
No, never try gaff
on their
tape.
Clothes?
That will actually leave a bruise.
No, on their clothes.
Oh, on their clothes, yes.
Yeah, gaff tape on their clothes, inside their shirt, but on their clothes.
But
and
if you're going to put it on their skin,
on their clothes instead of on their actual body.
If you're going to put it on their skin, use paper tape or painter's tape.
Or medical tape.
That's not going to hold.
Medical tape is very like fragile. They usually have to shave their chest if they're going to put it on their skin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, does the painter's tape actually work? I feel like it would just fall off constantly and then it would be annoying.
I'll be back in me.
All right. I mean, if I was going to do it, I'd probably have a few different kinds of tape just in case. But I've heard people use medical tape, but if it does become a problem, then yeah, you'd have to figure out some other way to do it. You might not put it on their chest. If you can't, you can put it on their shoulder or something, as long as it's like close, since the mic's picking up sound from every direction. Generally you can put it in the vicinity of them and they will pick it up, but the closer it is to them, the better. And that's why also if like they can't put it on their person, they're naked or something, and their hair is too short, then you have to figure out to where you can put it in the scene so that you can hide it. And that's when like people sometimes put it in like a plant and the person's next to a plant and you don't notice it, but they're just standing next to that plant the whole scene because they're talking and they're capturing the sound. And that's one way they're capturing some of the sound is that. So I just found it interesting that you can like hide it all over the place and it'll pick up the sound most of the time. But the closer it is to them, the better, because it'll pick up their whole voice and the way they're talking and the noise of their throat and everything like that. So it sounds a lot more higher quality.
Anyways, guys, I'm gonna get going. So,
all right, Daniel, thanks for coming.
Yeah, I just gotta join my other 3 meetings.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Thanks.
All right.
Good luck on everything.
Thank you. See you next meeting.
Yep. See you then.
Bye. How do I do this?
The other thing about the Lav mics is they're going to be plugged into a transmitter, which looks like this. One's a transmitter, one's a receiver. So you're plugging in the mic into one, and then it's sending the signal to the other one. And that device, the transmitter, is going to need to be hidden somewhere on the actor as well, or nearby or something. Like it's a very short cord, so you don't want it, like just like with the shotgun mics, you don't want the cord going all over the place, because these mics will be picking up everything. Which is why if they're moving around a lot, you want to secure it down with like the tape and stuff, because if it's moving around and it's getting shuffled a lot by the clothes, it's going to sound very like because the clothes are rubbing against the mic, making that noise. So it's very important to know where you can hide it and stuff like that. And these transmitters can go on someone's belt, or they can go in a pocket. I've heard sometimes they talk to if you're having a costume or something or wardrobe, they like make a little hole in the pocket sometimes, and they'll run the cord up through the pocket to the person, to the mic, wherever they put it on the person. And then they have the transmitter in the pocket, or on the belt or underneath piece of clothing somewhere.
Wait,
But
is
it
it
is something to think about.
is it bad if there's a layer of clothing over it?
No, like as long as it's not shuffling around on it, it's fine. They put it behind ties, they put it underneath people's collar. Some people put it like on the chest underneath. But if they're running in place or something or doing a lot of movement, it could cause
If
some
it's
noise.
rubbing against the clothes, pretty much.
But that's when you try to like put tape all around it. They kind of put it in like these little triangle patterns. Let's see if I can find it. I'll just type that, see if that comes out. Well, if I spell triangle right, maybe it'll come out. So yeah, they'll do something like that, like right here. Both sides of it will be covered.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And then they'll put it inside the clothing. They'll put the clothing on top of that. Now it's sticking to both. And then you have the mic in place. It's not going to be rubbing against clothing, and it's still going to be picking up sound because that part's exposed. So that's a good thing about lav mics. They can pick up sound from all over. But that's also an issue whenever you have a lot of sound happening around them, which is why, in conjunction, boom mics with these make the options really good so that they don't have, if you're on a beach, you don't want the people in the background to be heard. And with a lav mic, you'll pick them up a little more than you would with a boom mic pointed down at your actor.
Would you use both mics like on the same people?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So whoever's speaking is generally where the boom operator will be pointing their mic to. And then they'll switch back and forth between whoever's speaking. And you do that because for those reasons, like there could be problems or issues or anything, and you always want to have extra options. Maybe one sounds better than the other for whatever reason, you don't know, but
they'll still have like a lapel mic even if the boom is on.
Yeah. Usually, yeah. Especially in like higher end productions, they'll have both on everybody. There may be like one or two boom operators, and they'll just go around to each person, but they'll usually have a lapel lav mic on each person that speaks in the scene as well.
That makes sense.
Let me see. So they say the best place to put it is around a hand length away from the mouth. So that'd be somewhere like on the chest, or, like I said, somewhere in the hair, if that works, on their shoulder. A hand length away is the best, just for it to get the best audio, because they don't pick up as far away. The farther away the sound, the worse it sounds for a lav mic, because they're made to be picked up close by, because they're made to be put on the person. So the good things about it, they're discreet, they're portable, and they're hands-free. Cons are the clothing rustle stuff. The quality isn't usually as good as the other mics. And batteries, another thing is batteries, because they're wireless and they're sending a transmitter. Batteries is something to look out for, because you're always going to need to make sure that these batteries are charged and that they're not going to die on set during a good take, which happens. And it's like, oh, cut, sound just cut off, but that's why also you want to have those multiple sources, so that if that transmitter goes out, you still have the boom file if they choose to use that take during editing. And then there's just some of the different kinds, like you have all sorts and all sorts of brands. They look generally the same. Some might look a little bit different, but they're pretty much all the same. And they all do the same thing. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that? I need to get some Lav mics. I don't have any. I have a shotgun mic, but and my H4n recorder, but I'm trying to upgrade and get some Lav mics because I want some.
Do it.
All right, I think that's it.
Cool.
I do have a little bit on mics, but I didn't really like plan too much on that. One of the videos was talking a lot about the different kinds of mics. And the two used on set mostly are the shotgun mic or super cardioid and the Lav mics, or like you said, lapel mics. But there's also dynamic mics and condenser mics, which I believe a shotgun mic can be either dynamic or a condenser mic. Dynamic are sturdy and they're good at recording loud sounds close up. They're not good at capturing quiet noises, and they're also not the most accurate. I believe a dynamic mic is kind of like the ones you'll see. Okay, so dynamic mic was the one I was talking about when I was talking about the karaoke, not condenser. Dynamic mics are like these ones that you'll see people on stage using and things like that. And there's different kinds, but they're usually used for up close, holding it, or with the pop filter where they can talk into it directly. Condenser microphones, they record louder, hotter signal, giving better clarity and detail when recording quieter sounds. They also record sound more accurately to how we hear things. And I believe a condenser was, so the condensers are more like the ones used in studios and stuff like that. And the shotgun mics, I believe, are condenser. Okay, they can either be condenser or dynamic. So it just depends. But I believe the one I have the Zoom H MTG NGT2. And it's a condenser, I believe. And then you have the omnidirectional mic, which picks up sound from all directions, like the lavaliers. Large diaphragm condenser mics, they're good for recording vocals. And that's when you'll use a pop filter. And that's the ones you'll see in like different studio settings for singing or for voice acting and stuff like that. They usually have a mic like this with like a pop filter or something in front of it. And it's usually on a shock mount as well, so that any movement it does doesn't get picked up. But these are the types of mics you'll usually find in a recording studio for voiceover, singing, voice acting, stuff like that.
Sweet.
And these generally aren't used on set because they pick up sound from, they just pick up too much unwanted noise from different areas, which you wouldn't want. Like you could be able to hear the crew if you have a mic like this, because they pick it up similar to the lavalier mics, how they pick it up all over. They don't pick it up as much like that, but they do pick up noise from different directions, which means that they would be picking up a crew, which is why whenever you do have those studio settings, you'll see they have that like glass wall and it's all soundproofed so that they're only picking up the noise in that area with these kinds of mics. I think that's everything. So I already talked about the other ones like the cardioid, super cardioid, all that. It's a lot to learn, but I'm excited to like learn more about all of this stuff because it's a lot of stuff I didn't really know.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like it'll also help us for those of
Detachable
us that
pole
want to
for the-
work on a production company or even make our own productions. It'll help us know what to look for, what we're going to need, even what to look for from a sound guy, someone who works with sound, to know, hey, do you have this? Do you have that?
You talking about like this, V? This thing? Oh yeah, you can use something like that. They even have their own mics. Like some people have said you can use the mics. Of course, they're not going to be as good. Like the H4n I have, which looks exactly like this. That has a windscreen on the front of it, but it does have its own mics. So you can record things into it directly without having a separate mic. But it's not going to be as good as having its own, a different kind of mic for it. But I have seen that before. I think I have one. I just don't know where it is. But I don't really use it that way. They also have something called, like, when they're out in the field doing recordings, they have trying to capture sounds of, like, water or something. If you were doing a river, pistol grip sound. They have what's called like a pistol grip, which is kind of like that. You hold it like a pistol, and you put the mic inside of it, and it attaches to it, and you hold it like a pistol when you're pointing it at things, which I thought was pretty cool. That way you can pick up, like when they're walking on gravel or they're walking in the mud, they'll point it down at their feet and do that. Most Foley artists, most Foley artists will do both. They'll be like doing actual stuff outside in the field, and they will be doing stuff in a studio setting where they just put it on a slab and do a bunch of different things. I think the idea came out for them to be able to use it. Raphael, I think the idea came out for them to be able to use it like that so that they can point it in different directions. It's not going to move around too much. And so that it can be a one-person thing so that they don't have to carry a boom pole around. Because you wouldn't really use this in like a studio setting if you have a lot of people. It's more for capturing
like outdoor stuff,
sound effects.
Oh,
like walking or like the a river.
Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that was everything. Just for Monday, we're going to be going over hard light and soft light and talking more about like the harsh shadows and stuff that we were talking a little bit about today. We'll get more into that. And we'll continue sound equipment, going into some of those windscreens and the dead cats like we were talking about. And we'll talk about that type of stuff. And then
Wombats.
polar patterns, which I added. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about that stuff. If I learn anything new watching those things, I'll kind of bring that stuff up as well. And if anyone knows anything about that I don't, please let me know.
Honey, let's try to use wombats and respect Arden's sensibilities.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not gonna apologize about that. I just thought it. No, I was just saying how it like kind of made me uncomfortable. Like when I first heard it, when I first found out what the name.
It's just because it's a furry mush, pretty much furry
dead creature, we'll say. I don't know why they had to call it a dead anything. Like we could just call it a wind muff or something.
Some people just call it a wombat. They don't even say dead wombat.
They should
wombat.
call it fuzzy mitten.
Yeah. The
Mike's
fuzzy mitten. But yeah, that's the stuff we'll look into. And that'll be for Monday's meeting.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording right there.